All right, we are still on the National Water Month theme, a time to reflect on the state of the country's water resources and, of course, the need for conservation. And we're now joined by water expert Carin Bosman. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So I don't know how much of that interview you heard from the Deputy Minister, but perhaps give us your perspective. How would you describe, how would you characterize, the current state of South Africa's water system?
Oh, that's quite good afternoon, and good afternoon to our viewers. And that's quite a broad question. I think starting with why we are here and why we have March as a water month, I think in order to overall and largely address some of the challenges and issues with our water situation is that we need to broaden our understanding of how the water system works and use this water month as an opportunity for education about what water governance is and about what we need to realize when we are faced with issues such as no water in our pipes. And, I want to take it back to the conversation you had before you crossed over to the people in Bloemfontein, and may Mr. Lakota rest forever in peace. But before that, you had a discussion with the Minister of Health by perceived risks posed by endocrine disruptor chemicals, or EDCs, in sanitary pads. And the fear that's rising now from an academic paper that was totally taken out of context just underpins for me the lack of understanding that people have of how things like water management systems and environmental exposures work, and also when do we need to intervene by means of regulation, and then what type of regulation we need to implement. So I want to unpack those three aspects. And the first one is the concept of potentially harmful or hazardous versus risk. Now, I can take that as an example. A shark in the ocean is a hazard. As long as you don't get in the water with the shark, there's no risk that the hazard, the shark, will affect you. And so the difference between a hazard and a risk is the first aspect we need to understand. If one takes something like asbestos, the asbestos comes to people and affects people through inhalation. If I get skin contact with asbestos, or if I ingest asbestos fibers, I will not get exposed to the risk. The only way the risk gets to me is through inhalation. And the same goes for the presence of EDCs, endocrine disruptor chemicals, in something like sanitary pads, means that there's no route of exposure, because the risk route for EDCs to affect you is through ingestion. And as long as you don't eat your sanitary pad, the risk, the hazard, will not turn into a risk. But the fact that the EDCs are present, yes, that's not disputed. Is the risk be realized only if you eat your sanitary pads? And there is the point that I want to make, is often people want to raise fears by something that doesn't pose a risk at all, and then want us to spend money on something that is a perceived risk, which means we can't spend money on things that is an actual and a real risk.
Yeah.
And this brings me to, how do we deal with water governance, and how do we deal with the water situation? What are real risks and what are perceived risks?
Yeah.
Now, real risks are people do not have water in their taps. Then we have to follow a logical process, asking why 5 times. It's why, until we get to the root cause of the problem.
Yeah.
And one of the things that David Mashlobo, Minister David, mentioned, I know him for a very long time, is the fact of we do not ring fence the funding, the money. And that means that every month, me, you, millions of other South Africans, we pay our water and electricity bills with the expectation that that money is used to maintain and establish water infrastructure. Now, what has clearly happened in the city of Joburg is that a political decision was taken to redirect funds paid for the maintenance of water infrastructure into other municipal projects.
Yeah.
And this is where I blame not one, not just the political party in control, but every single political party who was part of the approval of that decision and who didn't make a big stink when that decision was
Yeah.
taken.
Karen,
And who's not being held
can I come in?
accountable, and that's the
Yeah.
last point.
Can I come in
Yeah,
there?
sorry.
Can I come in there? Because I think you raised an important point and something that we talked with the Deputy Minister about. Just having spoken about some of the problems that you're seeing in terms of the risks, I mean, what the Deputy Minister also talked about was the system remains, vulnerable. Pipes will break. And again, speaking about the ring fencing, of those funds. The President has now established this National Water Crisis Committee. We know, and I think your last point now was talking about municipalities, we know that many of the problems appear to sit at municipal level, particularly around, infrastructure maintenance, and again, capacity and resources. So looking at this committee, what are the key steps you think they should take now so that we can start seeing action and not just, glorified action plans on paper?
There's an old saying that says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And considering what I refer to as increased urbanization and increased consumerism, because the more we have a growing middle class, the bigger our middle class becomes, the more people start to consume things, and the more we consume, the more water we use, but also the more waste we produce. And I think very few municipalities are properly planning in medium and long-term time frames. So I've seen one or two cities that actually has plans in place for up to 2050, but we should actually have long-term plans in place up to 2080, at least a 30 to 50 year long-term plan and vision. And then you don't eat the elephant one bite at as whole in one sitting. You eat it one bite at a time, and it takes a whole village to eat the elephant. So then you break that 50-year strategy or long-term vision down into 5 or 10-year chunks. And then you can, with municipal budgeting in the same time frames, allocate and ring-fence the funding. Infrastructure doesn't break overnight. Infrastructure has a shelf life. Whether it's a dam wall made of cement or whether it's a pipe made of iron or clay. We in the city of Tshwane, some of our old pipes were built 120 years ago and they still work. We could see that it's clay pipes because sometimes the water gets brownish. But some other infrastructures, new plastic pipes, they might last longer. And so what I would really like to see is for each and every large, medium, and small municipality to have a 30, a 10, and a 5-year plan. I work a lot of mines and industries, and all of them have what we call integrated water and waste management plans for a minimum 5-year period in which they say, we need to do this, new things, we need to do this, existing things, maintenance, and here's the budget, and we allocate it and we ring fence it. I have not seen such plans for municipalities. These plans of municipalities, those things should be publicly available and publicly accessible, that people can see what is it that the municipality is doing with their money. And if a plan is not properly implemented, there should be an action, and every action should have a role assigned to it as the responsible party. And then those responsible parties should be held personally accountable. And this is where you can take criminal action against municipalities all you want. You can fine them all you want. In the end, it's the consumer that pays. So if you hold a municipality criminally accountable, who's going to prison? Who's going to pay for that court case? It's the consumer. It's my money that's going to pay for that. But if you have a plan and a person who is in a role at the municipality and that person is held personally accountable, whether they are in procurement or whether they're on a technical side, please bring accountability down to where it matters and stop wasting money in court cases.
All right, thank you so much, Carin, for your time and, of course, your analysis. Some of your viewpoints, of course, well taken, particularly how South Africans really need to start, educating themselves around some of these issues where water is concerned. That is a water expert, Carin Bosman, for us as we continue, of course, to put the focus on the water crisis situation in the country.